And that being said, maybe Power, you could give some specific examples of uh, how as a coach or a parent, one might introduce strength training or program training, since this is something that you do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, I've, coached a number of, you know, pre-adolescent kids in weightlifting and lots in track and field. And the strength training component is something that's always been a part of it, with the Olympic weightlifting, obviously, because that's in fact the sport, but with the track as well. And I think people need to sort of recognize that even though it's good to get kids that age strength training, it doesn't have to be that structured. And I think it's hard for people to picture, and perhaps rightly so, 10-year-old going to the gym and, doing all these sets and reps and taking notes in their little notebook. And some kids might enjoy that, but it can be less structured than that, right? Because again, the emphasis is on, learning good movement skills, learning good positions. And it doesn't take much to do that, especially if you view this for a youth athlete or just youth as a long-term thing, right? So, 1, 2 times a week is often plenty. Um, Focusing on things like pushing movements versus pulling movements, or squat type movements or hinge type movements. If you're doing Olympic weightlifting exercises, then starting with just overhead positions and learning how to squat and learning generally how to pull the weights. And you know, it's a lot easier now than it used to be because there's more equipment available to
Hmm.
facilitate this. With our Olympic weightlifting club, we have little 7 kilogram bars. And it's like a barbell, but it's aluminum and it weighs, like 15 pounds, which I haven't had a kid come in, and we don't really have that many kids under 12 just because of just the logistics of having kids in our space, but no one's had trouble lifting that weight. And of course, there's now those big plastic bumper plates, and they're the same size as uh, a standard size Olympic plate, but they weigh 2.5 kilograms. In the past, we've made plates out of a piece of plywood. You just get a hole
Yeah.
saw and drill it in the
Yeah.
center of where the plate goes through, and it does the trick. Similarly, starting a very light bar, or even I actually don't love the broomsticks. We can discuss that another time. Maybe I think they're they have no weight to them that matters, and it changes, especially ballistic movements, how they feel. People often really struggle finding positions when the thing's too light. And I know a lot of coaches like to, and I think this is performative as much as anything, where it's like, oh, well, if you can't do it with the broomstick, you can't do it with a bar. And that's nonsense. It actually takes longer to learn to do it with an implement with no weight, because it changes how you do it.
Yeah, you can't
Like
feel it.
you can do it anyway and get over your head with an empty bar. So, it's logistically with equipment now, it's easier to do, right? You've got this light equipment that's suitable for either very weak athletes or kids. Again, 1 or 2 times a week is usually more than enough. Higher repetitions versus lower repetitions. So, looking at ranging from 5 to 12 repetitions, which, for something like Olympic weightlifting is actually higher repetitions. And again, we're just trying to get them practice doing the thing, right? Like they're doing it. They don't need to max out. If you're doing, higher reps, they'll definitely get stronger on that. And the same holds for adults. Similarly with, or I guess before moving on, often too, 3, 4 exercises per session is lots. They don't need to be there a long time. You're just trying to, you do a few sets of squats, you do a few sets of some sort of overhead press or a row, you do a few sets of, an Olympic lift or some sort of, balance exercise, and you're good. That's all they need. Because you take that and you think, okay, over the course of a few years, you end up with quite a bit of experience. Similarly, and we talked about this before, it doesn't have to be weights. There's lots of good, jumping and plyometric exercises. Track and field is really good at this. They have um, an extensive breadth of exercises. Any track and field coach can just give you skips and jumps and body weight calisthenic type exercises all day long. Likewise, gymnastics, they're great at this. Any coach or parent interested in that sort of approach would do well to look for books on coaching gymnastics or track and field. I won't even name them. There's just so many, and they're frequently full or filled with exercises like this. And again, twice a week. maybe like 35 minutes of it, whatever, depending on the kid's attention span, depending on their age, how long they can focus and focus and have fun, right? Like you can make them do it longer, but make it short. Have them enjoy themselves. That's really important. All right.